25 frostbitten wolves were crammed inside Vera's tiny shelter when a deliberate knock sounded at dawn. She opened the door and found 300 warriors standing in perfect formation across the snow. At their head stood a towering man with black hair, silver eyes, and the authority of a king. Then he dropped to one knee before the Omega everyone had called worthless. Vera had saved his inner pack, but she still did not know why his gratitude felt more dangerous than the blizzard itself. Chapter 1. The Omega Who Couldn't Shift. We are taught that kindness carries its own reward, that compassion asks nothing in return, and that mercy is a gift given freely. Old stories tell us gentle hearts are protected by fate, that goodness eventually calls goodness back to itself. But when you are born at the lowest level of a hierarchy that measures every life by power, when your own body marks you as disposable before you ever take your first breath, you learn a harsher truth. Kindness is the most dangerous luxury an Omega can afford. In a world where alphas command and omegas obey, compassion is rarely praised as virtue. It is mistaken for weakness, and weakness can get you killed. I learned that lesson in my 23rd winter, on a night when a blizzard came roaring down from the northern peaks, like the wrath of forgotten gods. I learned it when I opened my door to dying wolves and tied my fate to the strongest pack in all 5 territories. I learned it when salvation arrived wearing the face of ruin, and the creature I saved became the force that threatened to consume the life I had built. They said the Alpha King felt no mercy. They said his pack was bound by blood oaths and ruthless loyalty. They said entire settlements had been destroyed for insults others would have ignored. His command was law, and the consequences of disobedience were written in bodies. They also said, Omegas, who drew his attention, vanished. I never expected to discover whether those stories were true. Then 25 frostbitten wolves collapsed outside my shelter. And the next morning, when I opened the door, the Alpha King's entire army was waiting beyond it. My name is Vera, and I am the Omega who cannot shift. The cold arrived early that year. Before the first real snowfall, I had already reinforced my shelter 3 times. I covered the roof with sheets of salvaged tin, packed moss and clay into every crack in the walls, and traded all the preserved herbs I had gathered during summer for enough firewood to carry me through winter. The other Omegas in the settlement called me fearful. They said I was wasting food and supplies on a shelter that would remain empty all season. No wolf, they insisted, would travel this deep into the borderlands when the great packs had warm dens, guarded halls, and full stores. But I had learned not to trust comfort. Comfort was a lie that killed slowly. In our world, a wolf's value was measured by the strength of the animal inside them, by the power of their shift, by how fast they could run, how fiercely they could fight, and how well they could serve their pack. My wolf had never appeared. Not during my first heat at 16. Not during the initiation trials at 18. Not during any of the forced awakening ceremonies my father dragged me through before he finally accepted that I would never change. After that, he stopped calling me his daughter. I was human-locked, broken. A dead end in a species that worshipped bloodlines. The settlement tolerated me only because I was useful. I knew which herbs slowed bleeding, which ones lowered fever, which roots eased the pain of difficult births, and which leaves could pull infection from a wound. I knew how to set bones, close torn flesh, and coax failing bodies away from death. My mother had taught me before sickness took her. After she died, my father married again and produced 3 flawless daughters who shifted easily and looked at me as though I were a stain they could never wash from the family name. So I lived alone on the eastern edge of the borderlands, inside a shelter I had built from the ruins of an abandoned watchtower. I traded healing for food, herbs for supplies, and knowledge for the rare moments of kindness offered by wolves who briefly forgot they were supposed to despise me. Mostly, I survived by staying unnoticed. The blizzard struck on the 9th night of the frost moon. I had been watching the weather for days. Birds fled south in broken, frantic flocks. Deer moved down from the high ground earlier than they should have. Even the forest had gone quiet in that unnatural way it did, before the sky tore itself open. Before darkness fell, I sealed the shutters, carried in more wood, and filled every jar and bucket I owned with fresh water from the creek before the surface froze solid. I had prepared for isolation. I had prepared for the cold. I had even prepared for the possibility that this might be the winter I failed to survive. I had not prepared for the scratching at my door. At first, I mistook it for the wind. The storm had been raging for 6 hours, turning the world outside into a screaming wall of ice and white fury. Then the scratching came again. Slow, deliberate, weakening. A moment later, a sound reached me through the storm. A whimper. Low, pained, desperate. A wolf. Every instinct I had sharpened through 23 years of survival warned me to leave the door barred. Wolves did not travel alone in blizzards. Wolves did not come to Omegas for help, and any wolf who reached a lonely shelter in the middle of a storm was either wounded, hunting, or part of a raid. None of those possibilities ended well for me, but the whimper came again, softer than before. Despite everything I knew, despite every lesson that told me compassion was a weakness I could not afford, I found myself walking toward the door. My hands shook as I raised the wooden bar. The moment I opened the door a few inches, the wind nearly tore it from my grasp. Snow blasted into my face hard enough to sting. I could see no more than a few feet into the white darkness. Then a wolf fell across my threshold. He was enormous, twice the size of any wolf I had ever treated. His fur was the dark gray of storm clouds, and blood had soaked the left side of his shoulder. Each breath scraped out of him in ragged gasps. When his eyes found mine, I saw the dull, distant look of someone already slipping toward unconsciousness, toward death. "No," I whispered, reaching for him before caution could stop me. "No, you are not dying on my doorstep." I caught his scruff and pulled. He was far too heavy to lift and too weak to help himself. His body barely moved. The wind screamed around us, and the cold bit through my clothes with terrifying speed. My fingers began to go numb even inside my gloves. "Come on," I hissed. "Come on." I planted my feet against the frame and dragged with all the strength I had. He slid forward a few inches, then a few more. My shoulders burned, my grip slipped. Snow gathered inside the shelter around my boots. Finally, his hind legs cleared the doorway. I slammed the door and dropped the bar into place with shaking hands. The sudden quiet felt deafening. I sagged against the wood, gasping while my heart pounded in my throat. The wolf lay motionless on the floor, bleeding across the rough planks I had salvaged from a ruined barn the previous spring. He was dying, and I had just locked myself inside a tiny shelter with a predator who outweighed me by at least 100 pounds. "Brilliant, Vera," I muttered as I forced myself upright. "An excellent survival decision." But I was already crossing toward my healing supplies. My mother had taught me to separate fear from action, so I examined him with the cool focus of a healer. A deep gash crossed his shoulder, claw marks, not teeth. The blood loss was severe, but not yet fatal. His breathing was strained, though steady. His body temperature was dropping quickly. I could work with that. For the next hour, I moved without stopping. I heated water, cleaned the wound, trimmed away matted fur, sewed the torn flesh with careful, practiced stitches while he remained unconscious beneath my hands. I packed the injury with a paste of yarrow and comfrey, bound it in clean strips of cloth, and covered his huge body with every spare blanket I owned. Then I fed the fire until the shelter became almost painfully warm. Only after I had done everything possible did I collapse into my chair. That was when I heard another scratch. My blood turned cold. Then came a third. A fourth. A chorus of weak whimpers rose beyond the door, barely audible beneath the wind. There was not one wolf outside. There were many. I stood slowly, my legs shaking, and stared at the barred door. This was how I would die. Not from hunger, not from the cold, not from a raid. I would be torn apart by a pack of desperate wolves because I had been foolish enough to show mercy to the first one. Still, I lifted the bar. I opened the door, and I saw them. 25 wolves, perhaps more, lay scattered through the snow outside my shelter. Some barely moved. Others had dragged themselves toward the doorway before their strength failed. The blizzard continued to bury them beneath white drifts. They were freezing to death. Every one of them. I should have shut the door. I should have accepted that I could not save them all. I should have protected myself. Instead, I looked at those dying wolves and made the most reckless choice of my life. All right, I whispered to them, to myself, and perhaps to whatever cruel god was watching. All right, come on. I wedged the door open with a log and began dragging wolves inside. One by one, I pulled them across the threshold. Some were unconscious. Some were aware enough to push weakly with their legs. All of them were massive. I hauled until my arms trembled, until the muscles in my back screamed, until my gloves tore and blood seeped from my palms. The shelter that had once felt roomy for one person became a crowded maze of fur, claws, heaving bodies, and desperate breathing. 25 wolves. 25 powerful predators packed into a space built for a single omega. By the time I dragged the last one inside and barred the door against the storm, dawn was only a few hours away. My shelter had become a den of dying wolves, and I had become their only chance. I piled wood onto the fire until the flames roared. Then I moved from one body to the next with water, cloth, needles, herbs, and what little strength I had left. I treated the worst injuries first: claw wounds, bite marks, torn muscles, signs of a battle they had either fled or lost. Others had no visible wounds at all. They had simply been trapped too long in the storm, far from wherever they belonged. Not one tried to attack me. None growled. None snapped. None showed even the slightest aggression. They only watched. Their eyes held something I could not name. It was not fear. It was not confusion. It looked almost like recognition. By the time the storm finally weakened and pale morning light slipped through the shutters, I was nearly as exhausted as they were. My hands would not stop trembling. My head throbbed. My body moved on stubborn determination alone. But they were alive. Against reason, against instinct, against every rule of survival I had ever learned. I had kept 25 freezing wolves alive through the worst blizzard the borderlands had seen in 5 years. When I finally collapsed into my chair, too tired even to close my eyes, I let myself feel one brief moment of satisfaction. I had saved them. I did not know I had just saved the Alpha King's entire inner pack. I did not know that hundreds of wolves were already crossing the snow toward my shelter. And I did not know that the silver-eyed male leading them was about to tear my quiet world apart. Chapter 2. The Alpha King at my door. I woke to silence. Not the violent howl of the blizzard, not the strained breathing of dying wolves. Only silence, deep, clear, unnatural. The kind of silence that made every instinct in my body tighten. The fire had burned down to glowing embers. Thin lines of morning light slipped through the shutters and crossed the floor in pale silver bands. All 25 wolves were awake, and every one of them was watching me. They were not sleeping. They were no longer close to death. They were simply staring. I pushed myself upright, and pain answered from every part of my body. My palms were raw. My shoulders felt bruised to the bone. Exhaustion clung to me like wet fur. But I was alive. Somehow, so were they. The enormous storm-gray wolf I had dragged in first had risen to his feet. He favored his wounded shoulder, but he stood steadily. His eyes followed every movement I made with an intelligence that sent unease crawling down my spine. The others were recovering at different speeds, yet all of them were conscious. All of them were focused on me. "Well," I said, my voice rough from shouting over the storm. "Good morning to you too." No wolf moved. Their attention felt almost ceremonial, as though they were waiting for me to say or understand something. I had treated injured wolves before, strays, Young wolves separated from their packs, hunters hurt near the borderlands. None had ever looked at me this way. I forced myself to stand, wincing when my knees protested. The storm is over. You should probably... A knock interrupted me. Not a scratch. Not a whimper. A knock. Measured. Deliberate. Made with unmistakable purpose. Every wolf in the shelter went rigid. My heart slammed against my ribs. No one knocked on my door. No one visited me. The Omegas in the settlement avoided my shelter, and higher-ranked wolves acted as though I did not exist. I had built this home at the edge of nowhere because obscurity was the only protection I had ever trusted. The knock came again. Patient. Certain. I looked around at 25 massive wolves filling nearly every inch of the room. Their bodies had tensed, and their attention had shifted toward the door with an intensity that looked almost like fear. Or reverence. I could not tell which. Stay, I whispered, though I had no idea why they would obey me. Then I crossed the room, lifted the bar with trembling hands, and opened the door. The world outside had changed overnight. 3 feet of fresh snow covered the borderlands, smooth and untouched beneath the sharp morning sun. The storm clouds were gone. Above me stretched a sky so bright and blue it looked almost cruel. And across that perfect white landscape stood more wolves than I had ever seen together in my life. Hundreds. Perhaps 300. They formed precise rows outside my shelter, each wolf massive, silent, and completely still. Their formation was military. Their attention was fixed on my door. At the front stood a man. He was the one who had knocked. He was easily 6.5 feet tall, with broad shoulders shaped by battle, and an effortless stillness that suggested violence did not need to be displayed to be understood. His black hair was drawn back from a face that looked carved from stone. Then I saw his eyes. Silver, not gray, not pale blue. Silver like moonlight on dark water, silver like the edge of a blade. Something old and dangerous watched me through them. He wore black leather marked with the silver insignia of the Northern Pack. The ruling pack, the pack commanded by... No, I breathed. Oh no. His mouth curved slightly. You are the Alpha King. It sounded less like a greeting and more like an accusation. I am. His voice was low and controlled, carrying the kind of authority that made obedience feel instinctive. And you are the Omega who sheltered my inner pack through the blizzard. My thoughts stopped. His inner pack. The 25 wolves filling my shelter were not ordinary warriors. They were the Alpha King's closest guard, the deadliest fighters in the 5 territories. The wolves whispered about in settlements and feared by rival packs. I had pulled them through my doorway one by one. I had stitched their wounds. I had covered them with my blankets and scolded them for bleeding on my floor. I was going to die. I did not know, I said quickly, stepping backward without meaning to. They were freezing. They were injured. You saved them. He said it as calmly as he might have described the weather. Then he dropped to one knee in the snow. Behind him, 300 wolves lowered their heads at the same moment. The movement was so perfectly united that I forgot to breathe. The storm-gray wolf I had treated first limped past me and stepped outside. He took his place at the Alpha King's right side. Only then did I understand. He was not simply one member of the inner pack. He was the second. The King's most trusted commander. You saved my second, the Alpha King said, still kneeling. You saved 24 of my finest warriors. You opened your home in the middle of a deadly storm, when every reasonable instinct should have told you to leave them outside. His silver gaze did not leave mine. You are owed a debt that gratitude alone cannot satisfy. Get up, I said. Panic sharpened my voice. Please, you do not owe me anything. I was only doing what... What is your name, Omega? The question cut through my words. I swallowed. Vera. Vera. He repeated it slowly, as if learning the weight of it. I am Kai, Alpha King of the Northern Pack, Lord of the 5 territories, and keeper of the blood oaths. He rose in one smooth motion. Suddenly, he towered over me again. He stood close enough for me to catch the scent of pine, snow, leather, and something wild beneath his skin. And you, Vera, have put me in an impossible position. My stomach dropped. I do not understand. The blood debt. He gestured toward his second and the army behind him. Under the old laws, when one person saves a pack member, that pack owes a debt. When someone saves a wolf of the inner pack, the debt belongs to the whole pack. He paused. When someone saves 25 inner pack wolves, including the second, the debt becomes impossible to repay by ordinary means. A spark of something almost amused crossed his eyes. I do not want repayment, I said. I do not want money, status, recognition, or anything else. Forget this happened. Forget? He said the word as though it had no meaning. You want me to forget that a human locked Omega, living alone at the edge of the borderlands, risked her life for my warriors? That she worked until dawn to heal them? That she gave them every blanket, every herb, every piece of wood she owned? He leaned closer. Tell me, Vera, do you know what people say happens to Omegas who attract my attention? The old rumors rushed back. Omegas disappearing. Omegas taken from settlements and never seen again. Stories spoken only in whispers beside low fires. I have heard things, I said. What things? That they disappear. And what do the stories claim I do to them? My mouth went dry. That you take them, hurt them, kill them. I could barely force out the final words. For a long moment, Kai studied me without expression. Then he threw back his head and laughed. The sound rolled across the snow like thunder. It was deep, genuine, and completely unexpected. When he finally looked at me again, something almost warm touched his face. Oh, little healer, you truly believe I came here to abduct you? I said nothing. No, he said firmly, I will not harm you. His expression changed, the humor disappearing beneath authority. But I am going to offer you a choice, and you will dislike both options. My hands tightened at my sides. What choice? Option 1. You accept a permanent place in my pack. You come to the Northern Keep and serve as my personal healer. You will have status, protection, resources, and everything required to practice your craft. You will never lack food, shelter, or medicine again. No one will question your worth. No one will dare touch you. For one dangerous moment, the offer sounded like every secret dream I had forbidden myself from wanting. A respected position, safety, purpose, a place where my skills mattered more than my missing wolf. That was precisely why I did not trust it. And option 2? I asked. Kai smiled with the sharpness of broken glass. I leave 300 wolves outside your shelter in permanent debt service until you accept option 1. I stared at him. They will hunt for you, guard you, escort you, and follow you everywhere. They will make it impossible for you to continue the quiet, invisible existence you have created here. He waited a beat. So in truth, little healer, it is not much of a choice. That is not fair. My voice trembled despite my effort to steady it. No, he agreed. It is not. There was no apology in his face. But I am not asking you to admire my fairness. I am asking you to use your judgment. He swept one hand toward the wolves surrounding us. These warriors owe you their lives under pack law. The debt must be honored. You may accept it with grace and gain everything, or reject it and lose the one thing you seem determined to protect. My solitude. Exactly. I looked over the army spread across the snow. Then I looked back into my shelter, at the patched walls, the narrow bed, the worn table, and the life I had built with my own hands from ruins and rejection. Finally, I looked at Kai. His silver eyes seemed to see through every defense I had spent years constructing. He was right. There had never been a real choice. If I come with you, I said carefully, what exactly will you expect from me? Something moved across his expression, surprise perhaps, that I had begun negotiating instead of simply refusing. You will serve as healer to my inner pack. You will live inside the keep with rank equal to my advisors. You will control your work and your personal life, with one exception. What exception? He stepped closer. You will be under my direct protection. You will not travel without an escort. You will not speak privately with outsiders without my knowledge. And you will never again place yourself in danger as you did last night. His voice lowered. I do not lose wolves I claim, Vera. Not to battle, not to storms, not to their own reckless compassion. His gaze locked onto mine. If you become mine, you remain mine. Do you understand? The word mine moved through me with an unexpected heat that was not entirely fear. And if I refuse? I asked, though I already knew. Then I hope you enjoy company. 300 wolves will become your permanent shadows. I turned toward my shelter one final time. It was small and crude, but it was mine. It was the place that had saved me when my family had abandoned me, and my settlement had decided I was worthless. I thought of the storm gray wolf whose shoulder I had stitched without knowing his rank. I thought of the other 24 who had trusted me while their lives hung in the balance. I thought of 23 years spent being told I was broken, useless, and disposable. For one night I had been none of those things. I had been necessary, essential. I need 3 days, I said. Kai's brow lifted. To organize my supplies, to settle what little business I have, to say goodbye to. I glanced toward the empty borderlands. To what? I had no friends who would mourn me, no family who would ask me to stay. But I needed time to understand what I was about to surrender. 3 days, Kai agreed after studying me. My second will remain here with 24 guards. I do not need 300 wolves. I do not need 25. His voice turned mild. Choose. I clenched my jaw. 25. Excellent. He turned toward the storm gray wolf. The animal shifted almost instantly. A man stood in his place. He looked younger than Kai, perhaps in his mid-20s, with gray eyes, a powerful build, and a jagged scar crossing his left cheekbone. The scar aligned with the wound I had sewn during the night. Thorn will see to your needs, Kai said. I do not have needs. That remains to be seen. He looked back at me, and for the first time his expression became impossible to read. Thank you for saving them, Vera. Thank you for opening your door when every reason in the world told you to keep it closed. Before I could answer, he shifted. The change happened so quickly my eyes could not follow it. One moment a man stood before me. The next, the largest wolf I had ever seen occupied his place. His fur was black as midnight. His eyes remained silver. He was magnificent and terrifying in equal measure. Kai turned and ran north. The army followed. 300 wolves poured across the snow like a dark river of muscle, fur, and disciplined power, leaving only the inner pack behind. I stood in my doorway, surrounded by 25 warriors, with no understanding of what I had agreed to. Thorn rolled his healed shoulder and grinned. Well, he said, far too entertained by my expression. This should be interesting. I stared at the wolves crowding my shelter, then at the trail their king had taken toward the north. I have made a terrible mistake. Thorn's grin widened. Oh, absolutely. He leaned against the frame as though we were old friends. But do not worry, little healer. We will make certain you survive it. Somehow, that was not comforting at all. Chapter 3. The 3 Days of Truth. The first thing Thorn did after Kai left was reorganize the space around my shelter. You cannot seriously expect all 25 of you to remain inside, I protested, as he directed wolves into positions around the clearing. There is barely room for 5 of you. We are not remaining inside, Thorn replied, his gray eyes bright with amusement. We are remaining close. There is an important difference. He pointed toward the wolves already forming a wide circle around my home. You keep your space. We fulfill our duty. Everyone is satisfied. This is ridiculous. This is pack law. When he turned toward me, the humor in his expression remained, but steel appeared beneath it. You saved our lives, Vera. Every wolf here would be frozen beneath the snow if you had not opened your door. Do you honestly believe we are going to let you disappear now? I wanted to tell him I had lived alone for years without a guard. I wanted to remind him that I was capable of caring for myself. Then I saw the way the others looked at me, not with pity, not with contempt, with something close to reverence. The intensity of it made me uncomfortable. Fine, I muttered. Stay outside. I need room to think. Thorn's expression softened. You have 3 days, little healer. After that, everything changes. Use the time well. He shifted into his storm-gray form and joined the perimeter. I went back inside alone, carrying the growing suspicion that I had exchanged one kind of cage for another. On the first day, I tried to live as though nothing had changed. I counted my stores. I examined the herbs drying from the rafters. I checked preserved food, spare cloth, needles, bandages, and the precious medicines I had spent years gathering. I made careful lists of what I could carry north, what I would have to leave behind, and what might survive the journey to the keep. Outside, the wolves watched through the windows. They were not threatening. They did not crowd the door or invade my space. They simply watched as though I were something valuable that might vanish the moment their attention drifted. By mid-afternoon, I could no longer bear it. I grabbed my gathering basket and opened the door. I need to collect winter plants before the next snow covers them. I am going to the eastern ridge. Thorn shifted into human form and immediately fell into step beside me. I will go with you. I do not need an escort. Indulge me. His tone was light, but the words were not a request. We walked through the snow-covered forest in silence. I searched beneath trees and around exposed stones for the hardy plants that survived cold weather. Thorn followed several paces behind, quiet and watchful. After nearly an hour, my patience broke. Why are you truly here? I demanded, turning on him. Do not repeat the words pack law or blood debt. Kai could have thanked me and left. Instead, he has practically conscripted me into his pack and assigned his entire inner guard to watch me. I tightened my grip on the basket. Why? Thorn studied me for a long moment. You have no idea what you did, do you? I pulled injured wolves out of a storm. You pulled the Alpha King's inner pack out of a storm, he corrected. Do you know why we were in the borderlands during a blizzard? I shook my head. We were hunting traitors. The humor disappeared from his face. 3 packs in the southern territories have been organizing a rebellion. They want to overthrow Kai, destroy the Alliance, and restore the old laws. Under those laws, power belonged to whoever could take it, and Omegas like you were property rather than people. He stepped closer. We tracked the rebels to a compound near the border. The fight went badly. We were outnumbered and outmaneuvered. Then the blizzard struck and separated us from the main force. His gray eyes hardened at the memory. We should have died. My mouth went dry. But you did not. No. A fierce smile touched his scarred face. Because one human-locked Omega looked at a group of dying wolves and decided our lives mattered. He held my gaze. Do you understand what that makes you, Vera? I said nothing. Dangerous. Valuable. Exactly the kind of wolf Kai needs. I am not a wolf. You are more of one than many who can shift. His voice gentled. You act from compassion instead of politics. You see worth where others see damage. You are broken in the same way Kai is. A chill moved through me. What does that mean? Thorn shook his head. That is not my history to tell. He looked toward the darkening sky. We should return before nightfall. We walked back in silence, but his words followed me into the shelter. You are broken in the same way Kai is. The Alpha King was feared across 5 territories. He ruled armies, negotiated alliances, and held power no one questioned openly. I possessed none of those things. We had nothing in common, except he had knelt before me in the snow. except he had offered protection and rank when he could have taken me by force. Except he had looked at me as though he saw more than the worthless Omega everyone else had decided I was. I did not sleep that night. On the second day, the settlement Omegas came. I was outside examining the temporary camp when 5 women appeared between the trees. My half-sister Alora walked at the front. They moved carefully, wearing the false neutrality of people approaching something they feared but wanted to study. They stopped beyond Thorn's perimeter. "Vera," Alora called. Her perfect face wore concern that never reached her eyes. "We heard what happened with the Alpha King. We came to make certain you were safe." No, you did not, I thought. They had come to see what favor I had gained. They wanted to understand whether my sudden connection to the Northern Pack might change their own place in the settlement's fragile hierarchy. Still, I walked toward them. Old habits were difficult to break. "I am safe, thank you for asking." "Is it true?" Mira, one of the younger Omegas, asked. Fear and fascination widened her eyes. "Is the Alpha King taking you to the Northern Keep?" "He offered me a position as healer to his pack." "A position," Alora repeated, her mouth twisted. "How generous. What did you promise him in exchange, sister?" The contempt was familiar. It still hurt. "Nothing. I saved his inner pack during the storm. This is how he has chosen to honor the debt. By dragging you away from your home?" She gave a brittle laugh. "How romantic." Elora stepped closer, and the emotion beneath her controlled expression finally revealed itself. Jealousy. Sharp, bitter, unhidden. "You have always been strange, Vera. You chose herbs and dying strangers instead of finding a proper mate. You built a shelter at the edge of nowhere, and lived like an exile when you could have tried to belong." Her eyes swept over the wolves surrounding us. "And now, somehow, you have attracted the attention of the most powerful alpha in the territories." She laughed again, this time without humor. "How long do you think it will take before he realizes his mistake?" "Alora, we all know why you saved those wolves," she continued, raising her voice. "You were desperate. Desperate to matter. Desperate to be useful. Desperate for someone to see value in a broken Omega who cannot even shift." Each word struck a wound she knew exactly how to find. You gambled your life because you needed proof that your existence meant something. And by some impossible chance, the gamble worked. She leaned closer. "But do not imagine it changes what you are." The worst part was that some of what she said was true. I had wanted to matter. I had wanted to be necessary. I had wanted, just once, to prove that my life possessed value. That is enough. Thorn's voice sliced through the clearing. He had moved between us without my noticing. His entire body radiated controlled threat. Alora paled. "I did not mean—" "Yes, you did." His gaze moved over all 5 women. "You will speak to the future pack healer with respect, or you will leave immediately." Alora stiffened. "She is my sister, and she is under the Alpha King's personal protection." Thorn's expression became cold. Any insult against her is an insult against him. Any attempt to harm her will be answered by the full strength of the Northern Pack. He smiled, and there was nothing friendly in it. And any Omega who believes Vera is lesser because she cannot shift should remember that she accomplished more in one night than the rest of you have managed in your entire lives. The women fled. All except Alora. She remained for one final moment, her face twisted with an emotion I could not name. Then she turned and walked away, her spine rigid with restrained fury. I stood in the snow, shaking. "You did not have to do that," I said. "Yes," Thorn replied. "I did." The threat left his posture. When he looked down at me, his expression was unexpectedly kind. "You are Pack now, Vera, or you will be in 2 days. Pack protects its own." "I am not Pack yet. Aren't you?" He gestured around the clearing. 25 of the deadliest warriors in the 5 territories watched me with unwavering attention. "They chose you the moment you opened your door," Thorn said. "Everything else is ceremony." I wanted to argue that I had never chosen them. I had never asked for protection, loyalty, or a place in their pack. But the words would not come. Some damaged part of me, the part that had spent 23 years hearing that I was unwanted, felt dangerously grateful that someone had finally chosen me, even if I did not yet understand what that choice would cost. On the third day, Kai returned. He came alone, walking through the trees with the calm confidence of a man who had never required an army to feel safe. He wore black leather and the silver insignia of the Northern Pack. His eyes found me immediately where I sat outside, completing the last inventory of my supplies. "Walk with me," he said. It was not quite a command. It was not quite a request. I rose and followed him into the forest. Thorn and the others watched us leave, but no one followed. Whatever Kai intended to say was meant for me alone. We walked for several minutes before he spoke. "You have been crying." It was not a question. My half-sister visited yesterday. She reminded me of truths I had been trying not to remember. What truths? That I am broken, that I am desperate, that the only reason you are interested in me is because I happened to be nearby when your warriors needed help. I kept my eyes on the snow. That I am a fool if I believe this is anything more than obligation. Kai stopped. "Look at me, Vera." I did not want to, but the command in his voice left no room to hide. I lifted my eyes. The intensity in his silver gaze stole my breath. "I am going to tell you something," he said. "You need to hear every word. Can you do that?" I nodded. "You are not broken." His voice was quiet and absolute. "You are inconvenient to a society that measures worth through power and defines value through the ability to shift. That society is wrong." He stepped closer. "I have commanded packs for 15 years. I have led armies, negotiated treaties, executed traitors, and built an alliance across 5 territories. I have witnessed strength in more forms than most wolves can imagine." His gaze never left mine. "What you did 3 nights ago required more courage than many battles I have fought. You opened your door to dying wolves when you had every reason to fear them. You chose their lives over your own safety." "You do not understand," I whispered. "I am not brave. I am simply damaged." His mouth curved. "Good. So am I." I stared at him. "What?" "My father was a tyrant." The words were flat with old pain. He ruled through terror. He brutalized anyone he considered weak. In his pack, Omegas were property, disposable, beneath notice unless they were useful. Kai looked toward the trees. "When I took power 15 years ago, I swore I would create something different, a pack where loyalty mattered more than fear, where Omegas had autonomy and protection, where being born without a shift did not mean being born without worth." My chest tightened. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you need to understand why I cannot simply let you disappear." He said it as though the answer should have been obvious. "You represent everything I have tried to build. You saved lives because no order forced you to, and no reward had been promised. You did it because your compassion was stronger than your instinct to survive." He lifted one hand and gently tipped my chin upward. "You are not convenient, Vera. You are essential." His silver eyes held mine with unwavering force. "If you join my pack, it will not be because I am paying a debt. It will be because I have spent 15 years searching for someone exactly like you, and I am not foolish enough to let you vanish now that I have found you." The words struck with the force of a wave. I could not think around them. "I do not understand." "You will." His fingers left my chin, but he did not step away. 3 days ago, you opened your door to my wolves. Tomorrow, I am asking you to walk through mine, not as repayment, not as obligation, as a choice." His voice lowered. "My pack needs a healer who recognizes value in damaged things." He paused, and something changed in his eyes. "And I need someone who does not turn away from monsters." "I am afraid," I admitted. "I am terrified." "Good." His smile was almost gentle. "Fear means you understand the danger. The question is not whether you are afraid, little healer. He leaned closer. The question is whether you are brave enough to come anyway. We stood in the white silence of the forest. The Alpha King and the Omega no one wanted. The choice settled over me with physical weight. I could remain in my small shelter, protected by loneliness and invisibility, or I could follow him into a future filled with power, danger, and possibilities I had never allowed myself to imagine. I need you to promise me something. Name it. If I come with you, I need real autonomy, not comforting words about status while you control every part of my life. I must know I am choosing this for myself, not because you trapped me between two impossible options. Kai considered me for a long moment. Then he nodded. You will control your work, your quarters, and your life inside the keep. You will answer to no one except me. I will never order you to violate your conscience or your duty as a healer. He paused. But your safety is not negotiable. Escorts, guards, and protection remain. It was more than I expected, more than I had dared to ask. All right, I said. His eyes sharpened. All right? I will come with you. Just like that? I met his gaze and felt something unfamiliar stir beneath my fear. Hope. You said you needed someone who was not afraid of monsters. I drew a slow breath. Perhaps I need someone who is not afraid of broken things. Kai smiled, and the warmth of it transformed his entire face. Then we have an agreement, little healer. He turned back toward the shelter. At dawn, your new life begins. I followed him with my heart pounding from equal parts dread and anticipation. By the next morning, everything I knew would change. I only hoped I was strong enough to survive it. Chapter 4. The Journey North. Dawn arrived too soon. I stood inside the shelter I had built with my own hands and tried to memorize it. Morning light slanted through the eastern window. Dried herbs hung from the rafters, filling the air with familiar scents. Moss and clay still marked the walls where I had sealed the cracks during my first brutal winter alone. This place had been more than a home. It had been proof that I could survive after everyone else decided I should not. Now I was leaving it behind. Ready? Thorn stood in the doorway, his gray eyes softer than usual. Behind him, the rest of the inner pack had already formed for the journey. Their breath drifted in white clouds through the frozen air. No, I answered honestly. I do not think I ever will be. He smiled. That is close enough. Come on. Kai is waiting. I lifted the small pack containing everything I could not bear to leave. A few essential herbs, my mother's needle case, 2 medical texts with cracked spines, spare clothes, nothing more. The rest would remain inside the shelter, waiting for a woman who might never return. The thought tightened my throat. Outside, the borderlands glowed in shades of blue and silver. The sun had only begun to rise over the eastern ridge. Kai stood at the head of the 25 wolves, already dressed for travel in dark leather and heavy furs. When his silver eyes met mine, a painful pressure formed beneath my ribs. Last chance, he said quietly when I approached. Say the word and I will leave you here. We both knew the offer was not entirely honest. He had already explained that the blood debt would not allow his pack to abandon me. Even if he left, guards would remain. Still, the gesture mattered. I am coming. I hoped my voice sounded more certain than I felt. Kai nodded and glanced at his second. Thorn will carry your pack. You will ride with me. I blinked. Ride? The keep is 2 days north in winter conditions. You cannot cover that distance on foot. He began to say something about shifting, then stopped as understanding crossed his face. Right, you cannot. The old shame rose instantly. I can walk. I will be slower than wolves, but I can manage. You will ride, Kai said. His tone ended the argument. Thorn, shift. The second changed at once. The storm-gray wolf stood before me, massive enough that his back reached nearly to my chest. Kai looked at me expectantly. Realization arrived with horror. You want me to ride a wolf? I want you to ride my second. He is steady, experienced, and will not throw you if we encounter danger. Kai's mouth twitched. Unless you would prefer to ride me. Heat flashed through me so suddenly that I nearly stepped backward. No, Thorn is fine. Thorn is perfect. Kai's smile became distinctly wolfish. A pity. Perhaps another time. Before I could answer, he placed his hands at my waist and lifted me onto Thorn's back. The wolf's fur was thick and warm beneath my fingers. I settled awkwardly, painfully aware that I had no idea how to balance on a moving animal, especially one large enough to carry a warrior into battle. Hold his fur, Kai instructed. Use your knees for balance. Whatever happens, do not fall. He glanced down at Thorn. His pride would never recover. The wolf beneath me made a low sound that resembled laughter. Then Kai shifted. The transformation remained too fast to follow. His enormous black wolf landed silently in the snow, silver eyes bright against midnight fur. He turned north. The pack began to run. The first part of the journey terrified me. Thorn moved with fluid power, each stride carrying us farther and faster than any horse I had ever seen. I gripped his fur until my fingers cramped, convinced that every sharp turn would send me into the snow. Gradually, I learned his rhythm. I learned when his body would rise beneath me, and when it would drop. I learned to move with his stride instead of fighting it. Most importantly, I began to trust that he would not allow me to fall. Kai ran at the front. His black coat cut through the white landscape like a moving shadow. His pace was powerful, controlled, and effortless. Every few minutes he looked back. Each time, his silver gaze found me, checking that I remained secure. The attention should have felt suffocating. Instead, it felt protective. At midday, we stopped in a clearing where sunlight had melted patches of snow and exposed the frozen grass below. The wolves formed a defensive ring without instruction. Thorn lowered himself so I could slide down. My legs shook the moment my boots touched the ground. I would have fallen if Kai, already back in human form, had not caught my elbow. "You are doing well," he said. "I feel as though someone beat me with a tree. That is normal. Your body is not accustomed to riding." He guided me toward a fallen log and placed a water skin in my hands. "Drink. Eat something. We rest for 1 hour." I obeyed gratefully, pulling dried meat and hard bread from my pack. Around us, the other wolves shifted into human form. They checked weapons, studied the trail ahead, and spoke in the easy, quiet manner of warriors who had traveled together for years. Scars crossed many of their faces and arms. Their movements were efficient. Their loyalty to one another was visible even in small gestures. I felt completely out of place among them. "You are staring," Kai observed. He sat beside me on the log, close enough that our shoulders touched. "I am trying to understand." I gestured toward the inner pack. "You are the Alpha King. You command the strongest wolves in the territories. Your guard is legendary, and all of this power is being used to transport one worthless Omega north because she happened to open a door during a storm. You are not worthless. Everyone else appears convinced that I am. Everyone else is wrong." He said it with such certainty that, for one heartbeat, I almost believed him. "Do you know what I see when I look at you, Vera?" I shook my head. "I see someone who survived alone for years, in conditions that would have killed stronger wolves. I see a woman who built a home from abandoned ruins and learned medicine without formal instruction." He turned toward me fully. "I see someone who chose compassion over survival when the choice mattered most. That strength has nothing to do with shifting." His gaze deepened. "It is exactly the kind of strength my pack needs." "Why?" The word came out barely above a whisper. "Why do you need that kind of strength?" Kai went silent. His eyes moved toward the mountains. When he answered, his voice was low enough that no one else could hear. "Because I am trying to build something that has never existed." He leaned forward, forearms resting on his knees. "A pack where authority comes from competence and loyalty, not only physical dominance. A place where Omegas possess agency, where betas have a voice, and where every wolf has a chance to matter, regardless of birth. He looked back at me. But the structure is fragile. The old guard wants my father's hierarchy restored. They see every reform as weakness. They are waiting for any failure that allows them to challenge me and fracture the alliance. What does that have to do with me? Everything. His smile was sharp. You are a symbol, little healer, an Omega who saved the Alpha King's inner pack, an Omega who earned a place at the Northern Keep through action rather than bloodline or favor. The meaning settled over me slowly. If you succeed, he continued, if you hold authority and earn respect, then every reform I have made becomes harder to dismiss. You prove that the new way works. Understanding hit with uncomfortable force. You are not simply giving me a position. You are making a political declaration. Yes. And if I fail, then I fail beside you. He answered without hesitation. But I do not believe you will fail. I believe you will surprise this pack, your enemies, and yourself. I wanted to accept his confidence, but 23 years of rejection could not be erased by a few powerful words. What if you are wrong about me? I am not. Kai stood and offered his hand. We should continue. I want to reach the northern watchtower before dark. I placed my hand in his. His grip was warm, steady, and stronger than necessary. He pulled me upright, then held on for one lingering moment before releasing me. Kai. He turned. Thank you for... The words failed. I gestured helplessly. For seeing something worth saving. His expression softened in a way I had not witnessed before. Always, little healer. Then he shifted, and the pack began moving north again. We reached the northern watchtower as the sun sank behind the mountains. The structure had been built directly into the rock, a vast military fortress with walls 20 feet high and guarded towers at every corner. Wolves patrolled the battlements, watching the passes with sharp, disciplined attention. Kai led us through the gates. The change in atmosphere was immediate. Every wolf wearing Northern Pack insignia stopped and saluted as he passed, fist to heart and head bowed. Kai acknowledged each gesture with a slight nod, carrying himself with the calm command of someone born to rule. I had known he was king. Seeing the obedience his presence inspired made the truth feel different, more real, more dangerous. We were assigned rooms in the Eastern Tower. The quarters were large, with several sleeping spaces arranged around a central hearth. The inner pack separated to rest, leaving me alone with the fire and the panic I had managed to hold back all day. This was happening. Tomorrow I would reach the keep. Tomorrow I would step into a court filled with wolves who had already spent years fighting over the kind of place I was being given. Tomorrow I would learn whether Kai's faith in me was wisdom or a catastrophic mistake. I was still staring into the flames when Thorn arrived carrying a tray. You should eat. He set it beside me. I am not hungry. Eat anyway. He sat across from me and poked the fire, sending sparks upward. You are frightened. Is it that obvious? Only to someone who has stood where you are standing. I frowned. Thorn watched the flames. I was born a beta, no alpha blood, no rare gift. I had reasonable fighting ability and a stubborn refusal to die. He gave a small laugh. When Kai offered me a place in his inner pack, I thought he had lost his mind. I expected to be killed within the first week. What changed? I realized Kai does not choose wolves by bloodline or by the strength of their shift. Thorn's eyes met mine. He chooses character. He chose me because I was loyal. He chose others because they were brave, intelligent, disciplined, or skilled in ways the pack needed. He nodded toward me. He chose you because you are compassionate, because you see value in damaged things, because you are exactly what he needs to prove that a different kind of pack can survive. That is an unbearable amount of pressure. Yes, Thorn agreed. It is. He leaned back. But you have already survived pressure that should have destroyed you. You lived alone in the borderlands. You built a life from ruins. You faced death at your own door and chose to save strangers. His grin returned. If you survived all of that, you can survive the keep. You can survive its politics, its judgment, and every wolf who tests you because they are afraid of what your success might mean. I wish I believed that. You will. Thorn rose and stretched. Rest. Tomorrow changes everything. He reached the doorway, then looked back. For whatever it is worth, I am grateful you opened your door that night. I am glad you saved us. And I am glad you are coming north. His expression turned serious. The pack needs someone like you. He left before I could answer. I lay on the sleeping pallet and stared at the stone ceiling. Around me, the watchtower remained alive with movement. Boots crossed distant corridors. Guards changed positions. Wind howled through the mountain passes. Tomorrow, I would reach the northern keep. Tomorrow, I would discover whether Kai's better world was real or merely another beautiful promise designed to control an Omega. I closed my eyes, but sleep refused to come. My thoughts were full of silver eyes, impossible choices, and the terrifying possibility that I was finally traveling toward a place where I might belong. Chapter 5. The Northern Keep. I woke to the sound of preparation. Voices carried through the watchtower. Supplies were being tied down. Weapons were checked. Wolves called instructions to one another as dawn light entered through the narrow window and turned the stone walls gold. Today, I would see the Northern Keep. Stay, the life I had agreed to would become real. I dressed in the warmest clothes I owned. They were practical, patched, and faded from use. Nothing about them belonged in the court of the most powerful pack in the territories. My reflection in the polished metal mirror showed a woman who looked frightened and determined in equal measure. An Omega walking willingly into the Alpha King's stronghold. What could possibly go wrong? Ready? Kai's voice came from the doorway. I turned and found him watching me with an expression I could not read. As ready as I will ever be. Good. He entered carrying a bundle of dark fabric. Before we leave, you need to understand something about the keep. My stomach tightened. What? It is not like your settlement or the borderlands. More than 500 wolves live there. My guard, the inner pack, advisors, healers, servants, and visiting dignitaries from other territories. He unfolded the bundle. A cloak fell open between his hands. It was deep midnight blue, lined with silver fur and fastened by a polished clasp shaped like a wolf's head. The keep is a court as much as it is a fortress, Kai continued. There are expectations, protocols, ways of presenting rank that everyone understands. I stared at the cloak. I do not understand what this has to do with me. You are arriving as my personal healer. Your rank will be equal to that of my senior advisors. You will live on the upper levels, enter restricted areas, and attend meetings that influence the pack. He held the cloak toward me. You need to appear as though you belong in that position. I touched the fabric cautiously. It was softer and more expensive than anything I had ever owned. Kai, I cannot accept this. You can, and you will. His voice was firm without cruelty. I know it feels like a costume. But at court, clothing is a language. This cloak tells every wolf who sees you that you carry my protection, that you possess authority, and that dismissing you means challenging me. What if I cannot live up to what it represents? Then you learn. He stepped closer. I am not asking you to become someone else, Vera. I am asking you to occupy the space you earned. His silver gaze held mine. You saved my inner pack. Walk into the keep with your head high. Every instinct I had developed over the years told me visibility was dangerous. Omegas survived by being useful, quiet, and easy to overlook. Kai was asking me to do the opposite. Still, I took the cloak. It settled over my shoulders with surprising weight. Warmth immediately surrounded me, but so did the awareness of everything it announced. Kai reached up and secured the clasp at my throat. His fingers brushed my collarbone. The air between us seemed to tighten. Perfect, he said softly. Now you look like what you are. And what is that? Someone worth protecting. The final approach to the northern keep stole my breath. We crossed the last ridge shortly after midday, and the fortress appeared below us. It had been built into the side of the mountain, a vast structure of gray stone and silver towers that seemed to rise naturally from the rock. Defensive walls circled the lower levels. Watchtowers guarded each approach. Black banners marked with a silver wolf snapped in the wind. The scale was impossible. The keep could have housed 1,000 wolves. Entire levels disappeared into the mountain itself, while tall spires climbed toward the sky. This was not simply a pack house. It was a seat of power. "Home," Kai said. He had traveled in wolf form for most of the morning. Now he shifted beside me as Thorn lowered himself to let me dismount. "What do you think?" Kai asked. "I think I am dangerously unprepared." His laugh was warm. "You will manage. Come, there are wolves waiting to meet you." We descended toward the fortress. By the time we reached the main gate, a crowd had gathered. News of the Alpha King's return had clearly traveled ahead of us. So had rumors about the unknown Omega he had brought from the borderlands. The gates opened. We entered a courtyard lined with hundreds of wolves. Guards stood at attention. Courtiers wore fine clothes and carefully neutral expressions. Servants paused in their work. Every face turned toward me. They saw a strange Omega wearing the color of the Alpha King's protection. They saw me walking beside him instead of behind him. They saw a challenge to everything some of them believed. Kai did not slow. He crossed the courtyard with effortless authority, and the crowd parted before him. I followed, my heart striking hard against my ribs. The main doors of the keep were carved with ancient battles and running wolf packs. Inside, the halls rose higher than any building I had ever entered. Massive beams supported the ceilings. Fires burned in hearths large enough to cook whole animals. Tapestries covered the stone walls with scenes from pack history. It was beautiful. It was also filled with tension. Wolves watched us as we passed. Some looked curious, others suspicious. A few made no attempt to hide their hostility. I could feel their questions following me through the corridors. Who was I? Why had Kai brought me here? What right did an unshifted Omega have to wear that cloak? Kai led me up several flights of stairs and along a quiet upper passage. At last, he stopped before a pair of dark wooden doors. "Your quarters." He opened them. I stepped inside and stopped. The suite was larger than my entire shelter. A living room surrounded a wide fireplace. Comfortable chairs and a writing desk stood near tall windows overlooking the mountains. Through an archway, I could see a separate sleeping chamber. One wall was covered from floor to ceiling with shelves. They were already filled with books, jars, cloth, instruments, and medical supplies. "This is too much," I said. "This is appropriate for your rank." Kai crossed to the windows. "Your private treatment room is 2 doors away. It connects to the main infirmary. It has been fully supplied. Assistants are available if you want them, but you will run it according to your own judgment." He turned. "Before you argue, yes, you earned this. Yes, you belong here. And no, I will not reduce it because you are uncomfortable receiving what you deserve." I opened my mouth, closed it, then tried again. "I do not know what to say. Say you will attempt to make this place your home." His expression softened. "Say you will give the keep a real chance." Then, more quietly, "Say you will stay." The final words held a vulnerability I had not expected from him. This was the Alpha King, a man who could command an army with one sentence. Yet he was asking. "I will stay," I said. "I will try. That is all I am asking." He walked toward the door, then paused. "There is a formal dinner tonight. My senior advisors, the inner pack, and several visiting dignitaries will attend. I intend to introduce you and establish your position clearly." My stomach dropped. A formal dinner with hundreds of wolves? 20. Kai looked almost amused. "Small, intimate. I do not know anything about court politics. You will learn quickly." His expression became serious again. I will not lie to you. Some of my advisors still believe Omegas should be useful and silent. They consider your place here an attack on the natural hierarchy. Tonight, they will test you. That is supposed to make me feel prepared? No. It is supposed to prevent surprise. He held my gaze. They will question you. They will search for weakness. They may attempt to provoke you into proving their worst assumptions. What am I supposed to do? Nothing extraordinary. Be the woman who opened her door during a blizzard because leaving injured wolves outside was wrong. His voice steadied me. You do not have to convince them that you deserve to exist. You do not need to defend every choice I made. You only need to be yourself. I thought of my shelter, the storm, and the decision that had changed everything. Yes, I said, I can do that. Good. Dinner begins at sunset. Someone will escort you. He stepped into the corridor. Until then, rest, explore, become familiar with the rooms. He looked back one final time. And Vera, thank you for being brave enough to come here. Thank you for giving my vision a chance. Then he left. I lowered myself into a chair by the fire and tried to calm my breathing. The afternoon passed as I explored the suite. A private bathing room stood beyond the sleeping chamber. It had heated water, clean towels, and soaps scented with lavender and pine. I washed away the exhaustion of travel and tried to prepare for the evening. Someone had filled the wardrobe with clothes. Several dresses hung inside, all in shades of dark blue, charcoal, and silver. Each was finer than anything I had ever touched. I chose the simplest gown, midnight blue with narrow silver embroidery at the collar and cuffs. It fit perfectly. That meant someone had studied my measurements closely enough to have it made or altered before I arrived. I was finishing a braid when someone knocked. Come in. I expected a servant. Instead, a tall woman entered. She had auburn hair, sharp green eyes, and the composed bearing of someone accustomed to authority. Black and silver marked her as Northern Pack, but the quality of her clothing and the confidence in her posture suggested rank far above an ordinary courtier. Her gaze moved over me in one efficient assessment. You are the Omega. I am Vera, I corrected. And you are? A small smile touched her mouth. Direct. That may help you tonight. She stepped farther into the room. I am Sienna, senior advisor to the Alpha King and head of the council. She studied me again. I have been sent to escort you to dinner and offer advice that might keep you alive. How reassuring. I am not here to reassure you. She sat across from me with elegant ease. I am here because Kai asked me to help you navigate the evening, and my loyalty to him is strong enough that I am willing to try. Her green eyes sharpened. But we should begin honestly. I do not understand why you are here. I do not understand what Kai sees in an Omega who cannot shift. And I certainly do not understand why you have been given status that others spent decades earning. Her bluntness was brutal. It was also easier to respect than false kindness. I saved his inner pack during the storm. So I heard. Sienna leaned forward. Here is what you need to understand. The Northern Pack does not rely on simple dominance. At least, not anymore. Kai has spent 15 years replacing fear with competence, loyalty, and results. She folded her hands. Many wolves support him. Others want his father's methods restored. They believe mercy has weakened us, and that Omegas should never possess authority. And my presence helps them. Your presence is either proof that Kai's reforms work, or evidence his enemies can use against him. Her expression did not change. You are a test case. The words landed heavily. If you succeed, if you demonstrate that an Omega can hold status because of skill rather than birth, you strengthen every change he has made. And if I fail? You give the old guard exactly what they need to challenge him. That is an unreasonable burden for one person. Yes, Sienna said. It is. She rose. That is why you need to survive tonight. She began listing instructions. Sit where Kai places you. Do not interrupt unless the insult demands an answer. Do not respond to every provocation. Remain calm. Speak honestly. Most importantly, do not show them fear. I am afraid. Then do not let it control your voice. She moved toward the door, then paused. They will ask questions designed to expose ignorance. They will use subtle insults and pretend they are ordinary conversation. Your task is not to impress them. It is to remain standing. Have I truly earned the place Kai gave me? Sienna considered the question. You opened your door to strangers during a deadly storm. You risked your own life because you could not watch others die. Something close to respect entered her face. I do not understand that choice, but I respect it. It was the closest thing to approval I had received from anyone besides Kai and Thorn. Thank you. Do not thank me yet. She opened the door. Come, it is time. I followed her into the corridor. The weight of the cloak, the dress, the position, and every Omega who had ever been told she was worthless, seemed to settle across my shoulders at once. Dinner was waiting. So was the first true test of whether I belonged in the Northern Keep. Chapter 6. The Council's Test. The dining hall was intimate in the most intimidating possible way. A single long table filled the center of the room. It had been carved from dark wood and polished until candlelight shone across its surface like water. Silver holders lined the table. Flames flickered against stone walls covered in tapestries of ancient victories. 20 chairs surrounded it. 17 were already occupied when Sienna led me inside. Every conversation stopped. Every face turned toward me. I felt their judgment as clearly as touch. They examined my dress, my cloak, my posture, and the distance between me and Sienna. They were searching for weakness. At the head of the table, Kai met my eyes. The pressure in my chest eased slightly. He stood. Because he rose, everyone else was forced to stand with him. The gesture was simple. The message was not. Counselors, honored guests, Kai said. His voice carried easily through the room. This is Vera, healer to my inner pack and the newest member of our court. He indicated the empty chair at his right. It was the place of highest honor, usually reserved for the second or most trusted advisor. Giving it to me announced my rank more clearly than any speech could have. It also placed a target directly over my heart. I crossed the room with my head raised while every gaze followed me. Kai pulled out the chair. Another deliberate mark of respect. I sat, and only then did the rest of the table settle. Allow me to make the introductions, Kai continued. He began with Sienna, seated 3 places away. You have met my senior advisor. Then he gestured to my left. Thorn, my second. Thorn grinned, the scar on his cheek shifting with the expression. We are already closely acquainted. Several members of the inner pack laughed softly. The others remained expressionless. Kai moved around the table, naming military leaders, trade negotiators, council members, and representatives from the territories. The titles blurred together beneath my anxiety. The final introduction caught my full attention. And our guest from the Eastern Pack, Alpha Dominic, who is here to negotiate trade agreements between our territories. The man at the far end of the table looked to be near 50. Silver threaded his dark hair. He wore green and gold, and his eyes held the cold calculation of a predator measuring prey. Something about the way he watched me made my skin tighten. An Omega healer, Dominic said. His tone was smooth and sweet in the way poisoned honey might be sweet. How progressive, Alpha King. He leaned back. I admit I am surprised to see one seated at your council table. In the Eastern Territories, Omegas serve the pack more effectively in traditional positions. The challenge came before the first course. In the Northern Pack, Kai replied pleasantly, competence carries more weight than tradition. Vera saved 25 members of my inner pack during the blizzard. She earned her chair. Saved? Dominic repeated. Or provided a warm room. Surely any Omega with a fire could have offered shelter. Thorn went still beside me. The tension across the table sharpened. Dominic was not only insulting me, he was testing Kai. searching for weakness in his judgment. Actually, I said. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. I treated severe battlefield injuries and advanced hypothermia. 3 wolves would have died without immediate intervention. I met Dominic's gaze. So no, Alpha Dominic. Not every Omega with a warm fire could have done the same. Silence cut across the room. I had contradicted a visiting Alpha. I had spoken without invitation. I had likely broken more rules than Sienna had managed to explain. But I was tired of allowing others to reduce what I had done to luck. Dominic's eyes narrowed. You have spirit. I wonder whether that spirit is supported by genuine skill or merely confidence in basic healing knowledge. I wonder whether visiting alphas commonly insult their hosts' advisors before dinner begins, I replied, keeping my tone even, or whether that custom belongs only to the Eastern Pack. Thorn made a strangled sound beside me. Several wolves lowered their faces to hide smiles. Sienna looked caught between admiration and alarm. Kai's expression remained unreadable, but approval flashed briefly in his eyes. My apologies, Dominic said, though his voice carried none. I only meant to understand what qualifies you for such unusual status. Omega healers are common. Omega healers with council rank are not. Then perhaps your experience is too narrow, Kai said quietly. The world is changing, Dominic. Packs that hold too tightly to old customs often discover they have been left behind. The warning was unmistakable. The Eastern Pack needed the trade agreement. Dominic's ability to negotiate depended on Kai's favor. Dominic inclined his head. I look forward to seeing the world you are creating. I hope it is more stable than it appears. Servants entered with the first course, allowing the conversation to shift toward hunting, weather, and territorial news. The tension did not disappear. I ate without tasting anything, aware of every movement I made. Wolves continued to study me, deciding whether I was an asset or a dangerous weakness. Kai spoke easily with his advisors, but I gradually noticed what he was doing. Whenever a question moved too close to me, he redirected the discussion. Whenever Dominic tried to turn the table toward my position, Kai returned it to pack business. He was protecting me, without making the protection obvious. Halfway through the second course, Sienna looked directly at me. You said you treated battlefield injuries. How much experience do you have with combat wounds? This was another test, but unlike Dominic's attack, it felt purposeful. Some, I answered. Most came from border disputes and hunting accidents. Claw wounds, broken bones, arrow injuries and blade cuts from conflicts with human settlements, cold exposure and hypothermia during winter. A scarred military commander leaned forward. That is specialized knowledge. Where did you study? Through necessity. When you are the only healer near the borderlands, you either learn quickly or watch people die. I held his gaze. I chose to learn. You trained yourself? Asked a female advisor with sharp, assessing eyes. No apprenticeship under a pack healer? My mother taught me the foundation before she died. Afterward, I learned through practice and every medical text I could obtain. Practice, Dominic repeated. Trial and error. How reassuring for the Alpha King's inner pack. My temper flared. The inner pack is alive because of that trial and error. Should I have left them bleeding in the snow while I waited for a healer with better credentials? I would have preferred that the Alpha King's guard not require rescue from a lone Omega, Dominic shot back. Perhaps if their training had been enough. Kai did not raise his voice. He did not need to. The words silenced the room. Dominic, your position is clear. You disapprove of my decision to give Vera a place in my court. His silver gaze hardened. But this is the Northern Pack. Here, results matter more than pedigree. Vera saved my wolves. She earned her authority. Any further challenge to her qualification will be treated as an insult directed at me. Dominic leaned back. His face became neutral, but cold promise remained in his eyes. Of course, Alpha King. I intended no disrespect. Did you not? Kai asked. His smile held no warmth. How fortunate that I am choosing a generous interpretation. The rest of the dinner continued with forced civility. The discussion moved to trade and territorial negotiations, matters on which I had little to contribute. I remained silent, grateful for the opportunity, but I still felt the judgment around me. I had made enemies merely by sitting in a chair others believed an Omega should never occupy. When the meal finally ended, Kai rose. Everyone followed. "Thank you for attending," he said. "Sienna, I expect the southern border reports by morning. Thorn, schedule combat exercises for the inner pack. I want every warrior returned to full readiness within the week." His eyes moved over the room. "You are dismissed." The council members left in small groups. Some looked at me with curiosity. Some ignored me with deliberate effort. Dominic paused at the door and held my gaze long enough to make every instinct in me warn of danger. Then he left. Only Kai, Thorn, Sienna, and I remained. "Well," Thorn said into the silence. "That went almost exactly as badly as expected." "Not entirely," Sienna replied. She studied me thoughtfully. "It could have been worse," she answered competently, did not cry, and did not flee the room. I stared at her. "By Omega standards?" "She means you exceeded expectations," Kai said. Approval had entered his voice. "Dominic was testing my strength through you. He wanted to know whether I would retreat from my decision under pressure. And did I strengthen your position or damage it?" "You strengthened it." Kai stepped closer. "You defended yourself without losing control. You demonstrated knowledge instead of demanding trust. You made it clear that you cannot be casually dismissed." A genuine smile touched his mouth. "Well done, little healer." Warmth unfolded unexpectedly in my chest. "I probably made enemies tonight." "You absolutely made enemies," Sienna said. "Dominic will tell the Eastern Pack you are arrogant. Half the council now considers you a political liability. The traditionalists are likely already planning ways to use your presence against Kai's reforms." "How comforting." "The other half is impressed," Thorn said. "The inner pack respected you before dinner. Now several council members do as well." He grinned. "And watching you strike back at Dominic was the best entertainment we have had at a formal meal in years. I am delighted my suffering improved the evening." "Your suffering improves many evenings," Kai said, but his voice was gentle. "Come, I will walk you to your quarters. You have survived enough politics for one night." Sienna and Thorn left us. Kai and I crossed the quiet halls together. "I meant what I said," he told me. "You handled yourself better than I expected. I insulted a visiting alpha. You defended yourself against a visiting alpha who was insulting me through you. There is a difference." We climbed the stairs. I became painfully aware of his nearness and the way his presence seemed to fill the corridor. "Dominic came to determine whether my reforms weakened the North," Kai continued. "By showing him that even my Omega healer could stand against him, you proved the opposite." We stopped outside my door. "What happens now?" "Now you rest. Tomorrow you meet the infirmary staff and begin learning the healing system." His expression grew serious. "It will not become easier, Vera. Tonight was only the beginning. There will be more challenges, more wolves searching for a reason to say you do not belong. That is not encouraging. No, this is." He reached for the edge of my cloak and straightened it with careful fingers. "You have already survived things that should have killed you. You are stronger than those wolves understand." His gaze held mine. "And you are no longer alone. You have the loyalty of my inner pack. You have my protection. You have a place here that no one can take unless you surrender it." I wanted to believe him. But one dinner could not erase 23 years of rejection. "Thank you," I said, "for defending me, for trusting that I could face them. Always, little healer." His eyes seemed almost luminous in the dim corridor. "Sleep. Tomorrow is another beginning." He walked away. I entered my quarters, closed the door, and leaned against it as the strain of the night finally crashed through me. I had survived my first dinner at court. I had challenged a hostile alpha. I had made enemies. Perhaps I had earned the smallest measure of respect, but as I changed and climbed into the enormous bed, I could not forget Dominic's cold stare. I could not forget the council members who had watched me like a problem requiring removal. Kai was attempting to build something new, and somehow, I had been placed at the center of it. I only hoped I could survive the real test when it came. Chapter 7. The Breaking Point. The next 3 weeks passed in a blur of unfamiliar demands. Kai kept his promise and gave me control of the healing facilities. The main infirmary was larger than the shelter I had left behind. Shelves held medicines I had only read about. Cabinets overflowed with clean bandages, surgical tools, dried herbs, tinctures, and equipment that would have taken me years to collect alone. 3 assistant healers worked beneath me. They regarded me with different mixtures of curiosity, doubt, and reluctant respect. I buried myself in the work. Work was safe. Injuries made sense. Fever followed patterns. Wounds could be cleaned, stitched, wrapped, and watched. Supplies could be counted and organized. Court politics obeyed no rules I understood. The traditionalists attacked through 1,000 small injuries. They forgot to include me in meetings that involved the infirmary. They questioned my treatment decisions in front of patients. During council discussions, they spoke over me, or dismissed my conclusions as the Omega's view, giving the phrase just enough contempt to make its meaning clear. I endured it. I kept my head down. I treated my patients. I reminded myself that competence would eventually speak louder than prejudice. The visiting delegations were harder. News had spread through the 5 territories that Kai had given council status to an Omega who could not shift. Some packs sent representatives because they were genuinely interested in his reforms. Others came searching for proof that the Northern Pack had become weak. Each visit brought another test, another question asked with a smile, another insult disguised as tradition, another wolf waiting for me to stumble. Kai defended me every time, publicly, firmly, without hesitation, and I began to hate it, not because I was ungrateful. His protection mattered. But every time he stepped in, I felt less like an advisor and more like a burden he was forced to carry, less like a healer and more like a political symbol he had to protect from being shattered. It made the traditionalists appear correct. I was the weakness their king constantly had to shield. Everything finally broke during my 4th week at the keep. The afternoon was gray and bitterly cold. I was in the infirmary stitching a deep cut across a young guard's arm. He claimed it came from a training accident. The wound looked more like a deliberate blade strike, but I did not press him while he was tense beneath my hands. I had nearly finished the final stitch when the infirmary door slammed open. 3 wolves entered wearing the insignia of the council guard. The man leading them was Gareth, a senior traditionalist I recognized from council sessions. From the first day, he had made his opinion of me clear. Omega, he said. He did not use my name. You are required in the main hall. The council is in session. I kept my eyes on the wound. I am treating a patient. The council can wait. It cannot. Gareth moved closer. The Alpha King has ordered your immediate attendance. That made me pause. Kai knew better than to interrupt treatment for politics. He had specifically declared that medical care took priority unless there was a true emergency. What happened? I tied the last stitch and reached for a bandage. The council has concerns about your handling of the Eastern Infirmary's supplies. Questions have been raised about your competence. My hands stilled. 2 weeks earlier, I had reorganized the Eastern Infirmary's stock, after discovering it held far more medicine than its patient volume required, while the main facility was rationing critical supplies. I redistributed the excess according to need. It was logical, necessary. Patient care had already improved. It had also humiliated Aldrich, the healer who had managed the Eastern facility for decades. He was a traditionalist who believed Omegas should never control medical decisions. My competence, I repeated. Based on what evidence? That is what the council wants to discuss. Gareth's smile turned cold. Unless you intend to refuse a direct summons from the Alpha King. It was a trap. I could feel the shape of it. Refusing would only give them more ammunition. Fine. I secured the guard's bandage, removed my blood-stained apron, and washed my hands. Take me there. The walk to the main hall felt like a march toward execution. Wolves stopped to watch us pass. Curiosity filled some faces. Satisfaction appeared on others. The rumor had already spread. The Omega was finally being called to account. When the doors opened, I understood how carefully the confrontation had been arranged. The hall was crowded. Not only council members but dozens of other wolves had gathered to witness whatever humiliation had been prepared. Kai stood at the front of the room. His face revealed nothing. Sienna stood beside him, equally controlled. Thorn leaned against a wall with his arms crossed. Fury burned beneath his stillness. In the center of the hall stood Aldrich, wearing the expression of a man deeply wounded by injustice. Vera, Councillor Brennan said. He was one of the loudest opponents of Kai's reforms. Thank you for coming. We have concerns regarding your recent redistribution of medical supplies. What concerns? Aldrich reports that the Eastern Infirmary has been left dangerously understocked. He claims the facility can no longer handle serious injuries and that wolves in that district are now at risk. It was a lie. A deliberate, calculated lie. That is false, I said clearly. The Eastern Infirmary held an unreasonable surplus of low-use medicine while the main infirmary faced shortages. I moved supplies according to patient volume and treatment needs. I looked at Aldrich. The Eastern facility has everything required to function safely. It simply no longer has enough surplus to supply the entire keep twice over. You question my professional judgment? Aldrich demanded. I have served as a pack healer for 30 years. You are an untrained Omega who has been here for less than a month, and you believe you understand my facility better than I do? The supply records speak for themselves. Your infirmary had enough fever medicine to treat every wolf in the keep while the main facility was rationing it. That is not responsible management. That is your interpretation, Brennan said smoothly. The interpretation of an Omega with no formal education, no recognized apprenticeship, and very little experience overseeing a pack-wide medical system. Sienna's voice cut in. She has the Alpha King's authority. Does she? Brennan turned toward Kai with an expression of carefully constructed concern. Alpha King, with respect, this situation illustrates what many of us have tried to explain. Giving unprecedented control to an unqualified Omega creates danger, regardless of her intentions. His tone remained calm and reasonable. She saved members of the inner pack during the storm, and for that we are grateful. But gratitude should not replace judgment. Some responsibilities require more than compassion and good fortune. Kai's voice became dangerously soft. Are you suggesting my judgment was mistaken? I am suggesting the debt has been honored. Brennan spread his hands. Vera has received protection, status, and recognition. She could continue healing under proper supervision, but council authority and unrestricted access should belong to wolves who have proven themselves over years of service, not through one dramatic rescue. My stomach turned cold. This had never been about supplies. The entire hearing had been designed to remove my authority and force me into the role they believed an Omega deserved. Useful, silent, subordinate. I looked at Kai. He was watching me instead of Brennan. Something in his eyes stopped me. He was waiting to see whether I would defend myself or stand silently until he rescued me again. Anger surged through every layer of exhaustion. I was angry at the constant tests, angry at having to prove my right to breathe inside every room I entered, angry at the wolves who treated my existence as a threat, and angry at Kai for placing me at the center of a battle I had never chosen. You want to discuss judgment? I said. My voice came out harder than I expected. Then let us discuss it. I faced the council. Aldrich stockpiled medicine in a facility treating perhaps 20 wolves a month, while the main infirmary, which treats hundreds, ran critically short. That is not careful medical planning. It is pride and territorial control placed above patient safety. How dare you? Aldrich began. I am not finished. The force in my voice shocked even me. I turned to Brennan. You say I lack education and experience. You are correct. I taught myself, because no one believed a human-locked Omega deserved formal training. I felt every eye in the hall. But I learned something your experienced healer apparently forgot. Medicine exists to save lives. It is not a symbol of rank. It is not property to be hidden so one facility appears more important than another. This arrogance proves our concern, Brennan said. You want to remove my authority? The words came sharp as a blade. Fine, but stop pretending this is about qualifications. You cannot tolerate seeing an Omega hold rank equal to yours. The hall went still. You cannot bear the thought that someone you consider broken and worthless became more valuable to this pack in one night than you have managed to become through years of protecting your position. Silence swallowed the room. I knew I had gone too far. I no longer cared. You are correct about one thing, I continued, my voice beginning to shake. I do not belong here. Pain cracked through the anger. Not because I am incapable, because I am exhausted. I looked around at the faces watching me. I am exhausted by the tests, the whispers, the meetings where I am ignored, and the wolves waiting for me to fail. I have spent 4 weeks trying to prove I deserve the position I was given. My throat tightened. It will never be enough. You decided what I was before I entered this keep. Then I turned toward Kai. You wanted me to become proof that your reforms work. A symbol that Omegas can possess value in your new system. My voice broke despite my effort to control it. But I am not a symbol, I am a person, and I cannot keep serving as your political declaration while everyone around me waits for me to collapse. Kai's face remained unreadable. Something flashed in his silver eyes. Surprise. Perhaps pain. I faced Brennan again. So here is my response. You want my authority removed? Consider it surrendered. You want me placed beneath supervision? You have won. I reached for the silver clasp at my throat. I will work as an ordinary healer under whatever rules make you comfortable, but I am finished trying to become something I was never allowed to be. I removed the midnight blue cloak. The cloak that announced rank, protection, and value. I laid it carefully on the table. Thank you for the opportunity, Alpha King, but I believe we both know this was a mistake. Then I walked out. No one stopped me. I crossed the hall through complete silence, past the staring wolves, and did not look back. I made it halfway to my quarters before the fury collapsed into grief. I had tried. I had given everything, and I had still failed. I was so lost in the thought that I did not hear the footsteps behind me until a hand closed around my arm. I spun around, expecting Kai, Sienna, or Thorn. Instead, I found Dominic. The visiting Alpha had remained at the keep, watching the fracture with those cold, calculating eyes. That was quite a performance, he said. His smile made my skin crawl. Are you always so determined to destroy yourself, little Omega? Or is that a gift the Northern Pack brought out in you? I tried to pull away. His grip tightened just enough to make the message clear. What do you want? To offer you another path. Predatory interest shone in his eyes. You obviously do not belong here. The Northern Pack does not appreciate what you can offer. He leaned closer. The Eastern Territories understand the value of talented healers, especially those with your courage. Understanding came quickly. You want me to defect. I want to free you from the gilded cage Kai built around you. Dominic's voice became persuasive. Come east. No endless council tests. No pressure to become a symbol. No pretending to be something you are not. Honest work, proper payment, and freedom from judgment. The offer struck every wound the council had opened. For one dangerous moment, it tempted me. Then the same instinct that had made me open my shelter door warned that his kindness concealed teeth. No. I forced the word out clearly. Thank you, but no. His expression hardened. Think carefully. You publicly challenged the council, insulted senior wolves, and rejected the Alpha King's protection. You destroyed your position in one speech. His grip tightened again. There is no path back from this. You are finished in the north. Then I am finished. I tore my arm free. But I am not going east with you. Pity. Dominic stepped away. I would have treated you better than Kai ever could. His smile became thin and cruel. But if you prefer to fall beside the Northern Pack's failed experiment, that is your decision. He walked away. I remained in the corridor, shaking from anger and adrenaline, certain that I had made everything worse. I did not return to my quarters. Instead, I went to the infirmary and hid in a narrow supply room where no one would expect to find me. I sat on the floor among folded bandages and sealed jars, wrapped my arms around my knees, and finally allowed myself to break. I had fought so hard to belong. In 4 weeks, I had managed to confirm every accusation my enemies made. I had lost control in front of the council. I had surrendered the authority Kai gave me. I had probably damaged his reforms beyond repair. The traditionalists would say an Omega could not endure power. They would say Kai had been blinded by gratitude. They would say I was exactly what they had always believed: broken, arrogant, unfit. The door opened. I kept my head lowered. I could not bear to see Kai coming to dismiss me, Sienna arriving to explain how much damage I had caused, or Thorn realizing his faith in me had been misplaced. Little healer. Kai's voice was quiet and careful. We need to speak. I know. I stared at the floor. I will pack. I will leave without causing more trouble. Look at me, Vera. I did not want to. His tone made refusal impossible. I lifted my head. Kai crouched in front of me, still wearing his formal council clothes. His silver eyes held an emotion I could not identify. You are not leaving. I blinked. What? You are not packing, you are not surrendering your rank, and you are not allowing Brennan's faction of cowards to convince you that you are small. His voice was firm, but gentleness ran beneath it. Do you know what I saw in that hall? I shook my head. I saw an Omega stand against a coordinated attack from some of the strongest political wolves in my court. He moved closer. I saw you defend your choices with records, logic, and results. I saw you expose hoarding that endangered patients. His fingers touched my chin and lifted my face until I had no choice but to meet his gaze. And I saw you finally stop waiting for me to rescue you. His eyes burned into mine. You rescued yourself. But I failed. I surrendered everything. You claimed your agency, he corrected. You told me and the council that you refused to exist as a political object. You defined your boundaries. His voice softened. That is not failure, Vera. That is exactly the strength I am trying to build into this pack. The council will never accept me now. I insulted them. The council will accept the truth. A sharp smile touched his mouth. And the truth is that you were right. Aldrich hoarded supplies. His pride damaged patient care. Brennan organized the hearing because he wanted your authority removed. Kai rose and pulled me up with him. Your full position is restored. I stared at him. You cannot simply do that. They will revolt. Let them. His silver eyes became fierce. I have tolerated the traditionalists because I believed gradual change would bring them with us. Tonight proved they do not intend to adapt. They intend to undermine every reform until nothing remains. What are you going to do? Call their bluff. He released my hand but remained close. Tomorrow, I will announce that any counselor unable to work with you may resign. The reforms are permanent. The Northern Pack moves forward, or it does not move at all. His gaze held mine. And you are going to stop apologizing for occupying the space you earned. What if I cannot? The question escaped small and broken. What if they are right? What if I am only pretending to be someone stronger than I am? Kai raised both hands and held my face. The gentleness of the gesture almost destroyed the last of my control. Then you are a frightened, damaged Omega who saved 25 lives during a blizzard. His thumb brushed my cheek. You reorganized a failing medical system in 4 weeks. You faced hostile alphas, hostile counselors, and relentless judgment without surrendering who you are. His voice lowered. You are allowed to be tired. You are allowed to become angry. You are even allowed to doubt yourself. He drew closer. But you are not allowed to give up. Not when we are this close. Close to what? To proving that another way can survive. To creating a pack where birth does not determine value. He paused. And perhaps, if I am honest, close to something that has nothing to do with politics. The air between us changed. His silver eyes searched mine. I have spent 4 weeks watching you remain brave when every part of you wanted to run. I am beginning to think. He stopped. Think what? I whispered. That conversation comes later. Kai lowered his hands. First, we survive tomorrow's council meeting. A rare uncertainty entered his smile. After that, we will see. He left before I could question him. I stood alone among the medical supplies, my heart racing and my world shifting beneath my feet. Tomorrow, the real fight would begin. But this time, I would not face it alone. Chapter 8. The Alpha King's Choice. I did not sleep that night. I sat beside the window and watched the moon cross the mountains, while every moment of the council disaster replayed in my mind. Every word I had thrown like a weapon. Every alliance I might have damaged. Every way I could have ruined what Kai had spent 15 years building. Beneath all of it waited the sentence he had left unfinished in the supply room. After that, we will see. See what? What had he almost admitted before he stopped himself? Dawn came too quickly, turning the mountain peaks gold and crimson. I dressed carefully in the same midnight blue gown, but I left the cloak folded on the table. If Kai required me at the council meeting, I would attend. But I would go as myself. Not as proof of his reforms. Not as a symbol placed in a chair for political effect. Only as Vera, the healer who had somehow become part of a revolution she never asked to lead. A knock came precisely at sunrise. I expected Thorn or Sienna. Kai stood outside. He still wore the formal clothes from the previous night. The shadows beneath his eyes suggested he had slept no more than I had. Walk with me, he said. This time it was clearly a request. I followed him through quiet corridors and down a staircase I had never used. At the end of a narrow passage, he opened a door onto a balcony facing east. The view stopped me. Mountain ranges stretched beyond sight. Dawn light touched the highest peaks while the valleys remained filled with blue shadow. The world below looked endless and untouched. My father brought me here, Kai said. He rested his hands on the stone railing. Usually after he had beaten me for some failure he invented. My chest tightened. He would stand in this exact place and tell me weakness was unforgivable. Mercy was stupidity. A true alpha ruled through terror. His jaw hardened. Then he made me watch while he punished whichever servant or Omega had shown me kindness. Kai, I am not telling you this because I want sympathy. He turned, and old pain haunted his silver eyes. I am telling you because you need to understand the enemy I have been fighting, not only rebels or hostile packs. My father's legacy still lives inside this keep. He looked back over the mountains. Some wolves remain convinced his methods were right. They believe my reforms are weakness. They want Omegas reduced to property again. I know that world, I said. I lived in it before you found me. Yes. He faced me again. And that is why what I told you last night was not entirely true. My stomach dropped. What part? The part about you being a political symbol. He drew a slow breath. When I first brought you here, that was exactly how I saw the opportunity. An Omega had saved my inner pack. If I gave her rank and she succeeded, she would prove that compassion and competence mattered more than bloodline. His mouth tightened with self-disgust. I thought it was perfect. And now? Now I understand how unfair it was. He stepped closer. I used your gratitude and your isolation. I placed you in the center of a political war and expected you to survive every attack because I needed your success. His voice became rougher. Last night, when you removed that cloak and said the entire arrangement was a mistake, part of you was right. The words hurt even though I had said them first. Not the part that called you unqualified, he continued. Not the part that claimed you did not belong. He held my gaze. You were right that I turned you into a symbol before I allowed you to be a person. For a moment, neither of us spoke. He was the Alpha King. He could have defended every choice, blamed the council, and demanded obedience. Instead, he was admitting fault. What happens now? I asked. Now I give you a real choice. He came to stand directly before me. Not the false choice at your shelter, not come with me or live beneath 300 guards. His expression was completely open. A genuine choice. He paused. Stay. The single word carried more weight than any command. Stay as my healer, with the authority you earned through your own work. Help me build this pack into something better. Something vulnerable crossed his face. And allow me to know you as Vera, not the Omega who saved my wolves, the woman who reads medical texts beside the fire, rearranges supply rooms with terrifying efficiency, and argues with me when she believes I am wrong. My heart began beating faster. Or leave. He said it without hesitation, though pain flickered behind the words. I will provide supplies, protection, and a home in any territory you choose. The debt is settled. No guard will follow you, no obligation will bind you. His voice softened. You may go wherever you wish and become whoever you choose. And what do you want? Kai looked at me for a long moment. I want to hope you stay. The honesty in his voice stole my breath. Not because you owe me, not because of duty or politics. His eyes searched mine. Because you want to, because you see something here worth choosing. I thought of my shelter. The life there had been quiet, safe in its own narrow way. If I left the keep, I could return to obscurity and never again have to prove myself before a council. Then I thought of the infirmary, of the patients who had begun to trust me, of Thorne's friendship and Sienna's reluctant respect, of the changes already improving lives, and of Kai looking at me as though he saw what I could become rather than what I lacked. I want to tell you a riddle, I said. He blinked. A riddle? One my mother taught me. I moved beside him at the railing. What breaks when you speak its name? Kai considered it. Silence? That is what most people answer. Or secrets. Or promises. I smiled faintly. But my mother's answer was nothing. I do not understand. The riddle convinces you that something fragile must shatter when named. But nothing truly worth having breaks that easily. I turned toward him. My entire life, people told me I was broken. That one failure would prove I should never have been trusted. That pressure would shatter me. My voice steadied. But I am not fragile. I am scarred. I am tired. I am afraid of failing. I held his gaze. But I do not shatter. I know. Do you? He went still. For 4 weeks. You protected me from every difficult moment. You defended me before I could speak. I appreciate why you did it. I searched for the right words, but it made me feel as though you expected me to break, as though you trusted your protection more than my strength. I was trying to help. I know. I moved closer. What I need is not someone who stands in front of me every time danger appears. My voice softened. I need someone who trusts me to fight. Someone who stands beside me. Someone who believes I am strong enough even when I am frightened. Kai studied me in silence. Then a slow smile changed his face. Warm, genuine, almost relieved. You are right. He held out his hand. I treated you like a wolf who needed rescue when what you needed was support. His palm remained open between us. So this is my promise. If you stay, I will not hide every battle from you. I will stand with you through them. His silver eyes held mine. I will not make choices for you. I will trust you to make your own, and I will not demand perfection. You may be exactly who you are. I looked down at his hand. This man had brought me north through manipulation and impossible expectations. He had also seen value in me before I could see it in myself. He had defended me with everything he possessed. Now he was offering something different from protection. Partnership. I placed my hand in his. I am staying. His fingers closed around mine. Not because of debt, not because I owe you. I drew a breath. I am staying because I want to discover what we can build. The pack? He asked. The reforms. The infirmary. All of it. And us? The question was quiet, uncertain, more vulnerable than anything I had ever heard from him. I do not know what us means yet, I admitted. I am still learning who I am here. Adding something more feels overwhelming. I understand. He did not release my hand. May I tell you what I see now when I look at you? You already have. Strength, courage. No. He stepped nearer. That was what I saw first. His thumb moved slowly across the back of my hand. Now I see someone who makes me want to become better, someone who forces me to live by my ideals instead of merely declaring them. His voice dropped. You look at me and see Kai, not a king, not a reformer, not a son trying to escape his father's shadow. My breath caught. Kai, I am not asking you for an answer. He spoke quickly, as if afraid I might pull away. I am only giving you the honesty you deserve. I brought you here for political reasons. His eyes darkened with feeling. But I want you to remain for personal ones. The world seemed to narrow to the space between us. If one day you want to discover what us could mean, I will wait. How long? As long as you need. I should have retreated. An Omega and an Alpha King stood on opposite sides of a power imbalance, too dangerous to ignore. Gratitude, proximity, and crisis could all imitate feelings that were not real. Instead, I tightened my hand around his. Ask me again in 6 months. His brows lifted. When I understand my place here. When we survive whatever disaster today's council creates. When we can be certain this is not gratitude or the intensity of what happened. A crooked smile appeared. I can wait 6 months, little healer. I could wait 6 years. Begin with 6 months. Warmth opened in my chest. We stood together while the sun rose over the mountains, our hands still joined. It was not love, not yet, but it was the possibility of love, a beginning built from honesty, trust, and enough space to grow. We should go, Kai said at last. The council will be gathering. Are you truly going to make them choose between supporting the reforms and resigning? Yes. His expression hardened. I have compromised too long. The traditionalists will never accept the changes. They will keep attacking individual wolves until the structure collapses. He looked at me. It is time to draw a line, and I need you beside me when I do it. Beside you, I repeated. Not behind me. Then that is where I will stand. We walked through the keep together. Wolves stopped and stared as we passed. This time, I did not lower my eyes. Kai did not walk ahead to shield me. He did not put his body between me and every judgmental glance. He simply remained beside me. The council chamber was full when we arrived. Brennan and his faction occupied one side. Sienna and the strongest reformists sat opposite them. Several undecided members filled the spaces between. The battle lines were visible. Dominic had also returned, watching with open calculation. He had probably come hoping to see the northern pack tear itself apart. Kai did not sit in the high chair. He stood in the center of the room, commanding attention without needing a throne. Thank you for coming, he said. His voice filled the chamber. Last night revealed that this pack has reached a crossroads. Today, we decide which direction we take. Alpha King, Brennan began. If this concerns the Omega's outburst, it concerns far more. Kai's words cut across his. 15 years after I took power, some wolves still believe strength comes from domination. They call compassion weakness. They would rather return to my father's hierarchy than accept meaningful change. Murmurs spread around the room. Last night, you organized a public attack on my healer. Kai fixed his silver gaze on Brennan. You used false claims about medical supplies to question her competence. You filled the hall with witnesses so her humiliation would become spectacle. His voice remained calm. You attempted to prove she did not belong. He paused. In doing so, you proved that the greatest threat to this pack is not an Omega holding council rank. It is a group of traditionalists willing to endanger patient care to defend their own status. That is unfair, one counselor protested. Is it? Sienna asked. Her green eyes flashed. Brennan has excluded Vera from meetings, undermined her orders, and spread doubt about her competence for weeks. Meanwhile, treatment times improved. Supply waste decreased. The infirmary now handles more patients safely than it did before she arrived. She is still untrained, Brennan snapped. Her success could be luck. The first serious failure will expose. When something goes wrong, I will handle it, I said. Every face turned toward me. Just as I handled the storm, just as I handled the infirmary, just as I handled every challenge you arranged during the last 4 weeks. Brennan's face reddened. You surrendered your position. You have no right to speak in this chamber. I did not surrender. I stepped forward. I set a boundary. I refused to remain your political target. My voice stayed level. That is called self-respect, counselor. You may wish to develop some. Shock moved through the room. A few wolves hid laughter. Kai's expression remained controlled, but approval warmed his eyes. Here is what happens now, he said. The chamber quieted. The reforms are permanent. His voice struck with the force of law. Omegas who demonstrate skill may hold authority. Betas may speak in council. Rank will be determined by merit, loyalty, and service rather than bloodline alone. He looked from one traditionalist to the next. Any wolf who cannot accept that direction may leave the northern pack and find a territory aligned with older values. The chamber erupted. Voices rose from every side. Some wolves shouted support. Others protested. Brennan stood with fury burning across his face. You cannot exile half your council for disagreement. That is tyranny. I am not exiling anyone, Kai replied. I am offering a choice. His tone remained calm. Stay and help build the pack I lead, or leave and seek a structure you believe in. What you may not do is remain here while undermining every reform through sabotage. What if we stay and vote against your policies? Another counselor demanded. Then vote against them. Kai's smile sharpened. That is the purpose of a council. Debate, disagree, compromise. His eyes moved across the chamber. But vote honestly, based on policy and pack welfare. Do not disguise prejudice as concern. Do not arrange attacks against individual wolves because you resent what their success represents. He turned slowly so every wolf could hear him. I became Alpha King to change this pack. I intend to create a place where value is not determined at birth. Omegas will have agency. Betas will have a voice. Every wolf will be given the opportunity to contribute according to ability. His expression hardened. That vision is not negotiable. Silence fell. If you can work within it, even when you disagree with individual decisions, I want you here. He looked directly at Brennan. If you fundamentally believe wolves like Vera deserve neither authority nor respect, then we have reached the end of our road together. For several long seconds, no one moved. Then Sienna stood. I support the Alpha King's vision. I always have. She glanced toward me. And for the record, Vera is the most effective healer this pack has had during my 15 years on the council. Thorn rose next. The inner pack stands with Kai. His gray eyes found mine. And with Vera. One by one, the reformists stood. Then several moderates joined them. To my surprise, a few wolves I had assumed were traditionalists also rose. Their discomfort with change did not outweigh their loyalty to results. Brennan remained seated. 5 hardline counselors stayed with him. They exchanged glances in silent communication. At last, Brennan stood. Not in support. I cannot serve a pack that elevates Omegas above their proper station. His voice was rigid. I believe these reforms will weaken the North and invite challenges from territories that preserve natural hierarchy. He looked toward Kai. But I also believe in the old law that an alpha's command governs his territory. Brennan inclined his head. I will leave before the end of the week and seek a pack whose values align with mine. The 5 others nodded. Kai's face revealed nothing. You will leave with honor, full provisions and recommendations acknowledging your service. Surprise crossed several faces. I reject your beliefs, Kai continued, but I will not erase the years you served this pack. Your departure will be dignified. Brennan seemed briefly unable to answer. It was more grace than I would have offered. Then I understood. Kai was proving that disagreement did not require cruelty. His new structure allowed dissent. It simply refused sabotage. Thank you, Alpha King, Brennan said. He hesitated, then looked at me. I hope I am wrong. His voice had lost some of its bitterness. For all our sakes. He left the chamber with the other 5 traditionalists. The air immediately felt lighter. Well, Sienna said, that was dramatic. Kai laughed. A true laugh, filled with exhaustion and relief. An understatement, Sienna. He looked around the remaining council. We have positions to fill, policies to review, and a pack to run. Then he turned to me. But first, Vera, I believe you left something behind last night. He held out my midnight blue cloak. I stared at it. This was not merely clothing. It represented authority, protection, and a place at the council table. The first time I wore it, it had felt like a costume chosen for me. Now Kai was returning it after I had fought for the right to define what it meant. I took the cloak and fastened it around my shoulders. Thank you. Always, little healer. His gaze held mine, warm with promise. Always. The council remained in session for 3 more hours. We discussed replacements, reviewed infirmary authority, and planned how to strengthen the reforms without turning every disagreement into a war. I heard only half of it. Part of me was still trying to understand what had changed. I had entered the keep as a frightened Omega who had pulled wolves from a storm. Then I became a political symbol. I was tested, dismissed, provoked, and nearly driven away. But I had survived. Not because I never faltered. Not because I was unbreakable. I survived because I remained myself even when being myself became the hardest choice available. 6 months later, I stood on the same eastern balcony. The keep had changed in dozens of visible and invisible ways. New healers had joined the infirmary. Some were Omegas. Others were Betas who had heard about the reforms and wanted to become part of them. Patient care had improved across every territory under Northern protection. The council functioned more smoothly without wolves dedicated to destroying the vision from within. I had changed as well. The midnight blue cloak no longer felt borrowed. I was Vera, healer to the inner pack and council member of the Northern Court. I was Thorn's friend and Sienna's trusted, if frequently challenged, ally. I knew the rhythm of the keep. I knew which council battles mattered, and which insults deserved silence. Most importantly, I knew my own worth. Not perfectly, but enough. You are thinking too loudly. Kai's voice came from behind me. I could hear it from the corridor. I turned. He leaned against the doorway in council clothes, watching me with an expression that had become familiar over the previous months. Patient. Interested. Warm in a way he rarely allowed others to see. I was remembering. Dangerous habit. I smiled. 6 months ago, you stood here and told me to ask again. I remember. He came to the railing and stopped beside me, our shoulders nearly touching. Are you asking? I looked at him fully. At the Alpha King who had gambled his reforms on an Omega no one valued. At the man who had learned to stand beside me instead of in front of me. At Kai, who brought medical texts from distant territories, argued with me in council, and made me laugh when I least expected it. I am asking. His attention sharpened. What did you mean when you said you wanted to discover what us could become? His smile arrived slowly. 6 months ago, I believed you were remarkable because you saved my inner pack. And now? Now I have nearly 1,000 other reasons. Such as? The ruthless way you organize supply cabinets. I laughed. The way you challenge me in council when you believe I am wrong. The way you treat every patient with the same care, including wolves who still question whether you deserve your rank. He turned toward me. The way you force me to become better, not only as a king, but as a man. My heart began to race. That is a great deal of remarkable. You are a great deal of remarkable, little healer. He lifted one hand and tucked a loose strand of hair behind my ear. His fingers lingered. So here is my question. His silver gaze searched mine. I said I would wait as long as you needed. I meant it. His voice became slightly unsteady. But I would like to stop waiting. I want to discover what this can be, what we can be. He paused. If you want it too. I thought of my mother's riddle. What breaks when you speak its name? Nothing worth having. I want it too. Kai's smile could have illuminated the entire fortress. Truly? Truly. But you need to understand something. What? I am still learning who I am. I will doubt myself. I will become tired. There will be days when I want to run back to the borderlands and hide inside my shelter. I held his gaze. I will not be easy. Good. He moved closer. Easy is dull. I prefer remarkable. Then he kissed me. At first, the kiss was gentle and uncertain, as though he feared I might step away. I did not. I leaned toward him, into the warmth of his body, and the promise we had spent 6 months refusing to name. The kiss deepened. All the tension, restraint, and possibility between us finally became real. When we separated, neither of us was breathing steadily. So, Kai said, his voice rougher than usual, does this mean you are staying permanently? I am staying. I smiled. Not because you saved me, not because I owe you, because this is where I choose to be. With me, with you, with the pack, with this impossible, frightening, extraordinary thing we are building. I rested my hands against his chest. Fair warning. I will probably drive you mad. You already do. Kai pulled me into his arms. You already do, little healer. We stood together as sunset spread across the mountains. The Alpha King and the Omega who could not shift. For the first time in my life, something settled completely inside me. I was home. Not because of blood debts, armies, political reforms, or dramatic rescues, though each had carried me here. I was home because I had found a place where damage did not erase worth, where scars were evidence of survival rather than shame, where one person looked at everything I lacked and still saw everything I was. Kai, I whispered against his chest. Yes? Thank you for seeing something worth saving. His arms tightened around me. Always, Vera. His voice held the certainty of a promise. Always. And this time, I believed him.